The screen is not black, but a hazy, burnt orange. The air shimmers with heat and fine dust. A city, but not as you know it. Khartoum, 2025. The sound is a constant, low-grade thunder, the percussion of a war with no front lines. And in a small, third-floor apartment, the world of a 68-year-old woman named Khamissa has shrunk to the size of a radio dial. Her knuckles, weathered and wise, tremble just slightly as she tunes it, the static crackling like a live wire. Then, a voice, tinny and strained, cuts through. It's her son, Adam. The line is a ghost of itself, but the terror in his voice is crystal clear. Mama, they're coming into the neighborhood. The fighting, we have to run. But the children. I can't take them through this. A sob, choked and desperate. I left them with Mrs. Hassan, 2 streets over. Mama, I'm so sorry, and then, the dead tone. The static returns, a hollow echo in the silent apartment. Khamissa doesn't cry. She doesn't scream. She simply lowers the radio, her eyes fixed on a photograph on the wall, 2 beaming grandchildren, Lena and Youssef, their smiles untouched by the world's decay. In that moment, a mission is born. Not from a place of heroism, but from a terrifying, primal calculation. Her son was west, trying to find a route out. Her grandchildren were east, in a house now sandwiched between 2 advancing militias. And between them lay a city that had become a slaughterhouse. It was 6:32 in the morning. The temperature was already 40 degrees Celsius. And Khamissa, a grandmother who needed help climbing the stairs to her own apartment, began to pack a bag. Her inventory was a map of her new reality. A half-liter of water, precious and golden. A handful of dried dates, wrapped in a cloth. A small knife, not for fighting, but for the desperate things one might need to cut. And her late husband's walking stick, a gnarled piece of acacia wood that was about to become her only shield. She locked her apartment door, a meaningless gesture in a city of shattered windows and kicked-in gates, but a final act of defiance against the chaos. The staircase was a tomb of shadows, each creak of a step a potential announcement. She reached the ground floor, pressing her back against the cool concrete of the lobby, and peered out into the street. It was a landscape from a fever dream. A car, flipped onto its roof, its wheels still spinning lazily in the hot air. The distant, rhythmic thump-thump-thump of heavy machine gun fire, a sound that seemed to be coming from everywhere at once. This was her first obstacle. 100 meters of exposed street, a no-man's land between her building and the relative cover of the market alley. She took a breath, the dust coating her throat, and began to move. Not with a sprint, her body was incapable of that, but with a low, determined shuffle, using the husks of abandoned vehicles as cover. Every shadow was a sniper. Every echo was a footstep. Her heart was a frantic bird beating against her ribs. Sh. She was halfway across when the crack of a sniper rifle split the air, followed by the whine of a bullet ricocheting off the car frame just meters from her. She froze, pressing herself into the rubber and metal, becoming part of the wreckage. The second stretched into an eternity. No second shot came. She didn't wait to see why. She pushed forward, stumbling into the narrow, claustrophobic darkness of the alley. This was the old souk, a place that once smelled of spices and perfume, now reeking of decay and cordite. Her plan was simple, a thread of logic in an illogical world. She couldn't go straight down the main roads, they were kill zones. She had to move laterally, through the shattered insides of the city, using a web of back alleys, broken down courtyard walls, and the skeletons of buildings she had known for 50 years. It was 11:17 a.m. The sun was a merciless eye in the sky. She came to her first major barrier, a wide avenue that acted as a demarcation line between 2 factions. To cross was to be exposed from both sides. A group of young men, their faces hard, were milling around a makeshift barricade of furniture and a burnt-out bus. Hiding behind a collapsed wall, Khamissa's mind raced. She couldn't reason with them. She couldn't fight them. So, she did the only thing she had left. She reached into her bag, pulled out the small, grimy bottle of water, and poured it over her head and clothes, soaking her modest tobe. Then, she took a handful of dust from the ground and rubbed it into her face and hair. She transformed herself in an instant from a weary traveler into a broken, pathetic, old woman, disoriented by the madness. Leaning heavily on her stick, she stumbled out from her cover, not towards the men, but at a diagonal, mumbling incoherently, her steps faltering. One of the men shouted at her. She didn't look up, just kept mumbling, shuffling, playing a role for her life. She heard laughter, a cruel, sharp sound. Another man yelled something she didn't catch. They thought she was a crazy old woman, lost to the heat and the trauma, not worth a bullet. She didn't stop her performance until she was a full block away, her heart hammering so hard she thought it would burst. She had passed the first gatekeepers of hell. The hours bled together, a montage of terror and sheer, dogged will. 2 p.m. She navigated through the shattered carcass of a textile factory, the colorful rolls of fabric now shredded and stained, fluttering in the hot wind like ghosts. 4:30 p.m. She took refuge in a bombed-out mosque, its minaret sheared in half, and there, in the profound silence of a place that had once been filled with prayer, she allowed herself 5 minutes of silent tears for the world that was lost. She ate 2 dates, the sweetness a shocking contrast to the bitterness in the air. The walking stick was no longer just a tool, it was a partner, testing the stability of rubble before she put her weight on it, probing dark doorways for dangers unseen. She was a ghost moving through a city of ghosts. Then, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in violent shades of purple and red, she reached the final leg. Her grandson's street. But it was wrong. It was silent. A deafening, unnatural silence. The fighting had moved on, but it had left its signature. Houses were gouged open, their intimate lives exposed to the street. A child's bicycle, twisted and melted by fire. And Mrs. Hassan's house, the front wall was gone. The second story had collapsed into the first. Her breath caught in her throat. This wasn't a rescue anymore. This was a recovery. A wave of nausea and despair so potent it almost drove her to her knees. All of it. The fear, the cunning, the desperate journey. For nothing. But then, a sound. Faint. Muffled. It wasn't the wind. It was, a whimper. Then a voice, small and terrified. City. Grandmother. It came from beneath the rubble, from what must have been the basement. A wild, impossible hope surged through her, erasing a day's worth of exhaustion. Lena. Yusef, she cried out, her voice a ragged scrap. She scrambled over the broken concrete and twisted rebar, her old hands scraping and bleeding as she pulled at smaller pieces. There, hidden by a collapsed cupboard, was a door, slightly ajar, leading down. The basement was dark, damp, and blessedly intact. And huddled in the corner, wrapped in a single blanket, were her 2 grandchildren. They flew into her arms, sobbing. Mrs. Hassan was there too, alive but in shock, a deep gash on her forehead. She explained in a trembling voice that when the shelling started, she had herded the children into the basement just seconds before the top of the house was vaporized. They had been trapped for almost a day, listening to the war rage above them, believing they had been forgotten by the world. But Khamissa had not forgotten. She had calculated, she had navigated, she had performed, and she had arrived. She held them tight, their small bodies trembling against hers. But the mission wasn't over. It was 7 p.m. Darkness was falling, and the night in Khartoum belonged to the demons. They couldn't stay here. She had to get them back. The return journey would be twice as hard, with 2 terrified children in tow. She gave them each a date and a sip of water, her voice firm now, a commander issuing orders. We are going home, she said, though home was a phantom concept. We move quietly. We move quickly. Do exactly as I say. As they emerged from the rubble, the city was lighting up with a new kind of fire, tracers streaking through the night sky, the distant glow of more burning buildings. The grandmother, the two children, and the walking stick turned their backs on the shattered safe house and began the long, dark walk back into the heart of the storm. The rescue was complete. The survival was just beginning.